Excellent!
Oh, really? That's great news!
Wow, I'm so happy to hear that.
Thanks. Bye. I just got a call from the landlord. He just won a lot of money, so we don't have to pay rent for a year.
Sweet! And I just got a call from the liquor store. Turns out I won a contest. A year's supply of free beer.
Sweet! High five! Whoop! Come in.
Just the guys I wanted to see.
Who are you?
Call me Mr. Big. I'm here to make your YouTube channel big.
You are? Oh, right.
Finally! Some real money for editing software. No more need for this piece of crap.
I'm not going to give you money, but I am going to promote your channel.
Yeah, I knew that. I was just kidding.
And I thought it'd be perfect to start with your 50th episode.
What are you talking about? We've done more than 50 episodes.
Not by my count, Chief. You guys have only done 49.
How is that possible? There was that 1 month where we filmed all those summer episodes in our bathing suits.
Yeah, I mean, that alone was like over 50 episodes. I mean, what's going on, Mr. Director? Oh, are you talking to me? Oh yeah, those episodes are coming out. It's a lot of editing. No need to accuse me of using those videos for my own personal use. Nobody's accusing you of that. Oh, carry on then.
Well, regardless of your director, I hope you guys get huge. Just sign these contracts.
Helping a small show made in the basement get big. This seems incredibly familiar.
Yeah, actually, kind of reminds me of Wayne's World.
Oh yeah. Things worked out great for them, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, boys. I'll take that.
Man, I used to love Wayne's World, but that video game.
Oh, yeah, that game was awful. One of the worst games for Sega Genesis.
Sega? It was way worse for the Super Nintendo.
That's it. Are we doing this?
No. Is what I would say on opposite day, I'm in. Worst Wayne's World.
Wayne's World was a reoccurring sketch on Saturday Night Live in the late 80s and early 90s. The character Wayne originally started in a segment called Wayne's Power Minute on the series It's Only Rock and Roll. Wayne's World gained in popularity, and the sketch was adapted into 2 feature films. And with the first feature film, of course, came video games.
There were Wayne's World games made for Nintendo, Game Boy, and DOS. The games we're looking at today were the ones made for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Both games were developed by Grey Matter Inc. and published by THQ. These games are incredibly similar and are notorious for how bad they are. But there are some differences. Which game is worse? Let's find out.
These games look incredibly similar.
And they both have terrible graphics.
This game is based on the movie, and you play as Wayne. He looks terrible in both games, with his oversized head on his cartoon body. And both games managed to get the shirt color wrong, white instead of black. But it's not just Wayne though. There are lots of characters from the movie, and they look strange too. Garth has the same oversized head, and so does Stacy, Wayne's ex. And the suck and cut guy is here, but they gave him a regular head. And the rest of the characters are just from the game. Some of them look kinda cool, like Gene Simmons' head, or this head banging baddie. But then you have other guys, like pastries, this guy, random instruments, a yellow submarine. I guess there was a Beatles reference in the movie. The gelatinous cube that was briefly mentioned in the film makes an appearance here too.
The levels are also locations from the movie. Sort of. They don't really look like they did in the film. They're supposed to be twisted video game realities. You have Kramer's Music Store, Stan Mika's Donuts, the Gasworks, and what they call psychotic suburbia. These levels look awful. It looks like someone threw everything they could onto the screen. The levels are too busy. It makes it hard to determine what's in the background and what's in the foreground. You can get confused about which walls you can pass and which objects you can jump on. The busy design also makes it hard to see certain enemies. They can just blend right in with everything else.
And the character animations aren't that great either. Wayne's animations are okay. It looks cool when he does a jump attack. Some of the bosses have decent animations too, but most of the regular enemies leave something to be desired. Some of these guys barely move. Are you gonna attack or not? Yeah, that looks like it took a lot of work. And the cutscenes are poorly animated too.
Speaking of cutscenes, these are some poor screen captures from the film. And it constantly uses the same shots from the basement over and over.
Those are some bad looking games.
Yeah, but my game definitely looks worse.
If you look at these games side by side, you notice how much darker the Sega game is. And in general, the Super Nintendo game has better use of color. You can clearly see this in the cutscenes, which look sharper in the Super Nintendo game.
The clearer picture and better color is worse, because now I can just see how bad this game is.
Even if that was a good excuse, there are other reasons your game looks better.
Let's check out the levels. The Super Nintendo levels have more detail than the Sega game. Check out this level. On Super Nintendo, you see people in the window. On Sega, nothing. In the same level, the stereos on Super Nintendo have all these flickering lights. On Sega, nothing. Then on this Super Nintendo boss fight, it's like a light show with different spotlights and the floor lighting up. And on Sega, nothing. Then, on this Super Nintendo level, you see the entire background scrolling. And on Sega, say it with me now, nothing.
There's no denying my game looks worse.
While both games look terrible, since the Super Nintendo game has better use of color, better lighting, and details missing from the Sega game, worst graphics go to Sega Genesis.
The presentation in these games is awful too.
I know, and these cutscenes are terrible.
Like I said before, both games use stills from the movie, and they look bad. The scenes with Wayne and Garth in the basement use the same 5 or 6 stills over and over. These aren't short cutscenes. They're long, too long. The dialogue is actually very true to the characters, but when you just read it instead of hearing them say it, it loses its charm and becomes tedious. They do a lot of their top 10s here, which really drags it out.
It's so annoying. You just want to get to the game, but you gotta sit through these guys trying to crack jokes.
I know, I hate it when that happens.
In addition to the basement scenes, you get some scenes from the movie. The very choppy headbanging in the car scene is here, of course. The other cutscenes change things and ruin the jokes. Like the scene where Wayne gets pulled over and the T-1000 shows up. That's hilarious in the movie. In the game, instead of the T-1000, you get Garth. That joke just doesn't make sense anymore. And remember the scene where Wayne asked the rich old guy for Grey Poupon, just like in the commercial? But in the game, he just says mustard. Mustard? Mustard isn't funny.
So what's the deal with ketchup? Get off the stage! These games have some bad cutscenes.
Right. But my game's presentation is worse. Let's just look at the HUD during gameplay.
Both games have similar HUDs with your score, various power-up icons, a special icon, a lives icon, and a health icon. The big difference is the Sega game put this against a black background. It makes the icons easier to see and marks a clear HUD area. On Super Nintendo, everything is just thrown on top with no black background. It makes it harder to see, and it doesn't look as neat as the Sega game.
Yeah, but my HUD sacrifices visibility. You can see more in your game.
It still looks neater than my game.
But your game does have some better use of presentation.
Let's look at this cutscene on Super Nintendo. Just like the show, the game does an extreme close-up. It's easy to pull off on Super Nintendo with your Mode 7. On Sega, not even close. And when you beat a level on Super Nintendo, the screen does the diddly-diddly thing that Wayne and Garth always do. On Sega, it just goes to the next level. More effort on Super Nintendo means worse presentation on Sega Genesis.
I mean, a black background on the HUD? That's barely presentation.
Even though the HUD is a little cleaner, since the Super Nintendo game has cool transitions between the levels, and Mode 7 for a real extreme close-up, worst presentation goes to Sega Genesis.
Both of our games have all the same songs.
And songs from the movie.
Right, but this is an easy decision. Can't deny that Super Nintendo quality.
Yeah, you'd think so. But the more electronic sound on Sega sounds really good.
Are you kidding me? Yours sounds closer to real instruments.
Both games have the Wayne's World theme. Both games have an interesting take on Foxy Lady. And both games have bad renditions of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, my game sound is worse.
No, mine is.
Yours is more clear.
Yours is more rockin'.
Well, my game has some questionable sounds. Listen to the theme song again.
On Sega, you have a cool sound to emulate when Wayne slides his pick down the guitar. On Super Nintendo, it sounds like farts.
You want to hear bad sound? Let's compare sound effects.
I have some bad sound effects compared to you. Listen to this disco laser. And now mine.
You want bad sound effects? Listen to my game.
Listen to this guy headbang on Super Nintendo. What's wrong with his neck? He's nice and quiet on Sega. And my heat-seeking weapon sounds like a baby squirrel crying.
Well, my heat-seeking guitar sounds like a baby squirrel dying.
And that's nothing. Let's talk voiceovers.
Both games have the same voiceovers. On Super Nintendo, they're nice and clear. On Sega, the same voiceovers are terribly distorted.
Highway. Highway.
You just can't deny those terrible sound effects.
Even though the Super Nintendo has a little fart action, for having bad sound effects and distorted voiceovers, worst sound goes to Sega Genesis.
Our gameplay is incredibly similar.
Agreed.
These games are action platformers. In both games you play as Wayne. You have one button to jump, one to attack, and one to do a special. You attack with your guitar, which is a cool idea. You can get different power-ups for different types of attacks. And your special takes out all the enemies on the screen. It's limited, but you find plenty of them throughout the levels.
The goal is simple. You just need to get to the end of the level without dying. Every level has 2 or 3 stages. When you get to the last stage, there's a boss. There's a total of 4 levels in this game.
It might seem simple,
But these games are loaded with problems.
Let's start with Wayne's attack. When you're on the ground, the attack is immediate. You see an enemy, you press the button, and he attacks right away. The problem occurs when you jump. For some reason, they decided to have a delay for the jump attack. Sure, Wayne does a cool Pete Townsend animation, but it plays terribly. If you try to jump and attack an enemy, you have to time it perfectly. Otherwise, you'll be late. And you're so used to the quick response when you're standing, that when you jump and attack, it really throws you off.
Another problem is the levels. Simply, they're too long. The levels aren't linear either, so it's so easy to get lost. And having everything look the same doesn't make it any easier. You'll be confused if you were already in an area. The lengths of the levels might not be a problem if this game had one thing: checkpoints. This game has no checkpoints. These levels are incredibly long. Having to start from the beginning after navigating your way through this mess of a level is incredibly frustrating. These games aren't exactly easy. You're gonna die. A lot.
There are a lot of ways to die in this game, and a lot of them feel incredibly cheap. From enemies that blend into the background, to blind jumps, to enemies that come out of nowhere, and that stupid delay with the jump attack. You are going to die a lot in this game. Most of the time, it doesn't feel like it's your fault. It just feels like poor design.
And overall, it's not a satisfying experience. You don't feel accomplished when you beat a level. You're mostly upset because there's more. You have to do it again. This game could have greatly benefited from cutting out some stages. I mean, do you really need 3 stages of the same level? Couldn't the music store have been done in 1 or 2 levels? This mindless repetition really wears you down, fast. You don't really feel motivated to continue.
Even though both games are bad, mine is definitely worse.
One thing my game has, yours doesn't, is a timer. The Sega game gives you a whole 500 seconds to beat the level. Now, don't get me wrong, the timer itself isn't bad. Lots of games have timers to make sure you're not wasting time. The problem here is the length. 500 seconds? Really? That's so much time. Look at this, no Stairway to Heaven. You could listen to the entire 8 minutes and 2 seconds of that song and still have time left over. There's no way you will ever die in this game from the timer. You'll either get killed or beat the level way before you run out of time. For having a ridiculously long timer, which is ultimately pointless, worst gameplay has to go to Sega Genesis.
As dumb as that timer is, I got you beat.
Let's talk about slowdown. The Super Nintendo game is plagued with slowdown. You'll run into slowdown a lot. Some levels you get slowdown every 5 seconds. It ruins the experience and gives my game worse gameplay.
The Sega game's not any better. I have plenty of slowdown too.
Yeah, but I have a lot more. You've got that sweet blast processing to keep things moving. You don't have anything like this in your game.
Hey, don't use my blast processing against me. And my game is definitely worse.
Like I said before, this game has power-ups. When you beat a stage in Super Nintendo, all of your power-ups carry over. That makes sense. This game is difficult, so you can use all the help you can get. When you beat a stage in Sega Genesis, all your power-ups carry over too. Sometimes. Whether you keep your power-ups or not seems to be based on points. You get enough points, and the power-ups carry over. You don't get enough points, and you lose everything. You have to start from scratch. But the game doesn't tell you how many points you need in order to keep your power-ups. You just have to hope you got enough points by the end of the level. That doesn't seem fair. The Super Nintendo, on the other hand, doesn't do that. The points don't seem to matter. Your power-ups carry over if you get a lot of points or very few points. Since the Super Nintendo carries over the power-ups no matter what, Sega's gameplay is worse.
But those power-ups are everywhere. You could get them back in no time.
You just don't get it. My gameplay is worse. I don't care how deep I have to go. Let's look at the cheat codes.
Both of these games are bad. Both of these games are incredibly repetitive. Luckily on Super Nintendo, you have a cheat code that lets you select any stage you want. You can even start in a cutscene if you want. And how's about that Sega game? How's that cheat code? Oh wait, the Sega game doesn't have any cheat codes. No level select or anything. This forces you to actually play the entire game. My game is much worse.
Yeah, but I'm sure you have Game Genie codes.
Oh, I do, but yours are much better.
Both games have Game Genie codes. Super Nintendo has a plethora of codes to choose from. And what does the Sega Genesis game have? 4. 4 cheats. That's it. Lots of cheats on Super Nintendo, 4 cheats on Sega. Not only that, when you Google the Super Nintendo codes, it's the first link. Makes sense, that's what Google does. But when you Google the Sega Genesis codes, you know what comes up first? The Super Nintendo Game Genie codes. Okay, so maybe the Sega game's second. Nope, the Nintendo Game Genie codes are next. You have to scroll down to the 5th link. The 5th link! Click on a few more links, scroll to the bottom of the page, and then, and only then, will you find the 4 Game Genie codes. What a pain! A pain to play the game, and then a pain to find the stupid codes. It's completely ridiculous.
Okay, but most of my cheat codes are useless.
Most of my cheats change the effect of your power-up to another power-up. It's not really that useful. Then I have all these variations of lives and invincibility. It's too much. Give me 4 nice and simple codes any day.
Too much? Really? Well, in general, your cheats are better.
For the invincibility in the Sega game, when you get hit, you can lose a power-up. And you still have to hear Wayne say "not" when he gets hit. The invincibility on Super Nintendo, however, you don't lose a power-up. You don't even flicker. You just run right through the enemies. And you don't have to hear Wayne say "not." Such a relief for your ears. My gameplay is worse.
Since the Super Nintendo offers more, my gameplay is worse.
Even though it doesn't have as much slowdown, for having useless time, not always carrying over your power-ups, having no level select code, and having fewer Game Genie codes, worst gameplay goes to Sega Genesis.
Even though both games are terrible, one is worse. Worst Wayne's World game goes to Sega Genesis.
It has worse graphics with poor use of color, lighting, and fewer details in the background. It has worse presentation with a lack of transitions and no real extreme close-ups. It has worse sound with bad sound effects and distorted voiceovers. And it has worse gameplay with a useless clock, power-ups that don't always carry over, no level select, and fewer Game Genie codes. Even though the Super Nintendo game has more slowdown, it offers more than the Sega game does. Worst Wayne's World game goes to Sega Genesis.
All right, It's done.
Sweet, so we're one of the big YouTube channels?
Not exactly. I sold your channel and made myself a pretty penny.
No way!
You can't do that.
Those contracts you just signed gave me total control of your channel. And I made a lot of money. Taco Bell, here I come. Live Moss, boys.
So that's it. Our channel's over.
This is the worst day ever.
Hey guys, Mr. Olds Teeth, your landlord here. I gambled away all the money I won, so bottom line, you're gonna have to find a new place to live.
Oh no! It got worse!
Hey guys, Mr. Storefoss from the liquor store here. Where do you want me to put this order of non-alcoholic beer?
No alcohol? But that's the best part!
Yeah, this contest was the only way to get rid of this stuff.
So we have no show, no place to live, and we have no beer. I can't believe it's gonna end this way.
It's been an honor playing with you, sir. Wait a minute. I have an idea. Why don't we just do what they did in Wayne's World? Get the happy ending.
Good idea.
Still kind of feels the same.
The same, but different.
I'm Nintendo.
And I'm Mattel. This is Console Wars!
Joe from Same Name Different Game and Eric from Game vs. Game? What are they doing here?
I think I know what happened. We diddled all wrong.
Diddling is so hard to do.
Yeah, we diddled so hard, we went to an alternate universe instead of that happy ending.
So what does that mean?
That means we need to diddle until we get the happy ending.
Your game plays like butt.
Nuh-uh. Your game plays like butt.
Plays like butt, that is good writing.
Come on, let's go. This still isn't right. I am Hans.
Und this is Console Wars! I think it's gonna be a while before we find a good universe. Let's just do a bunch in a row.
I am Rafiki, and this is Console Wars.
We are Street Fighter, and this is Console Wars!
I'm a raptor, and this is Console Wars!
I'm Bubsy, and this is Console Wars. Well, hey!
I'm Scorpion, and I'm Smoke, and this is Console Wars. Man, this isn't good.
I know. Scorpion should be with Sub-Zero, not Smoke.
Let's get out of here.
Great, I wonder what craptastic thing we'll see here. I'm Nintendo.
And I'm Sega.
This is Console Wars! Ah!
It's odd.
But I can't look away.
I'm Nintendo, and I'm Sega, and this is Console Wars.
Okay, in this universe, we've been replaced by floating boobs that can talk.
Yeah.
That's so lazy.
Yep.
It's pathetic.
Uh-huh.
Can we stay?
Yes, we can stay.
Thanks for checking out our 50th episode. There are 50 of these bad boys now. Can you believe it? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to DaGameNerd for his donation of the 2 games. And thanks to everyone who requested Wayne's World. And thanks to everyone for sticking with us through 50 episodes. And keep those other suggestions coming. We will get to them. Also, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Console Wars goodness. 50 episodes! Later.
Jesus. Hey guys! Oh, thanks for watching! Oh god! Okay, I'm getting up.
Something just gave.